scenarios in my head. It's like, now my big joke is like, so when I get my tattoo, I can just, that's what she's gonna do. Like, this recent event, she does fine. Okay, you'll have to tell me. That was part of my class's thing. That was my end of the year gift. Yeah. Yeah, that's Janice. Yeah, I know all of that. So yeah. Yeah. Yeah, she was sitting there what I wanted dogs, and then I'm gonna have to go like right there. And then I liked her. Right. I'm wearing it on the right. I'll just wear my. I'll get a rainbow one. Yeah. So Maureen texted me and was like, "Be honest. Would it bother you if I copied your tattoo right now?" I was like, "No." But I think for the average, I am. I am. Yeah. I am. I'm not going to do it. Yeah. Fine. I got 3 more dogs. At some point, you're going to have dogs named all down your arms. You're gonna be like, I love dogs. Right. You're all my dogs. Maureen is a animal. Absolutely. I would say she's during the pandemic, she was like traveling to the city and like walking dogs, shelter dogs. I'd be like, what do you do this weekend, Maureen? She's like, well, I'm on my way to Cleveland, Ohio, to a dog shelter where I'm going to walk dogs. Right. Clean their kennels, right? She does. She's legit. Maureen walks her dog. She also started really? 11 years. She was buying all the groceries herself. Seriously, and they right. Stay hot. Yeah. Fantastic. How long have you been going through it? 2020. I know. I did not know it was going to be such a bright, glorious. And ZACK felt for you guys. Because I would call her every other day and be like, so we take advantage of that. Oh my God. Yeah. Oh. She's paying. I mean, the things are shit. Oh, man. I love it. And then it's not great. Because you're doing it.
Right. So these there are ferals.
And not as much as like older. So
Which means they're gonna be pure and graceful. No time. No time. Sorry. Oh, it's a church. Okay.
She's a nurse. She has
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
You got stories.
I mean,
I've been there.
plenty of time, yeah.
that's what came from. Really? I went to
We're gonna get started in just a minute, so thank you all for being here. Nothing was going on. Thank you.
your audition.
No, just not. I was 16.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they had their.
Yeah, I was in exercise.
And I, so the woman who's directing, so she's now directing. I gave notes and tell her. And it's really possibly. And I think it just like that there is like right now,
Right. Good for you. Wow,
Yes.
Hello, everyone. Yay. Hi, friendly people on a Saturday afternoon on a holiday weekend. Thank you. All right, well, I want to thank you all so much for joining us. This is Left Bank Books presents teacher, advocate, and husband of former presidential candidate Pete Buttigieg, Chasten Buttigieg, who will discuss the young adult adaptation of his moving, hopeful, and refreshingly candid memoir, I Have Something to Tell You. Buttigieg will be in conversation with St. Louis journalist, LGBTQIA+ community advocate, and former LBB bookseller, Left Bank Books bookseller, Tovea Euteu. Today's event is possible because of your support. When you support Left Bank Books, your money goes directly into the local economy. It helps keep our bookstore open, and it also helps keep your streets paved, your libraries funded, your parks free, and so many other things that make St. Louis a better place. So I would like to thank you all for shopping local and for supporting this event. I would like to thank a couple of organizations. First off, the Left Bank Books Foundation. They are helpful in sponsoring this event. Promo, PFLAG, and several other local organizations that were able to help promote this event. All of these organizations are fighting on the front lines for our existence. It is very hard for me to stand up here and still have to talk about our basic rights to exist. I think most of you will agree with me on that. The state of Missouri has been rapidly trying to erase citizens' rights, and for all of those organizations fighting, we applaud you. The Left Bank Books Foundation is actively fighting book banning efforts by getting banned books into the hands of those who need these stories. We are happy to add Genderqueer to our list of books available to anyone for free through the foundation. So if you would like a free copy, there are 6 books that are available for free from the Left Bank Books Foundation, and that is possible because of support from donors and friends of Left Bank Books. So if you would like a free copy, or if you would like to make a donation to the Left Bank Books Foundation, you can talk to me after the event. I would be more than happy to tell you a lot about the fantastic things that the foundation does. I also want to say hello to our virtual attendees. Hello, virtual attendees. Welcome to the event. I meant to do this way earlier, but you're here. Thank you. I'm Shane Mullen. I am the event coordinator for Left Bank Books. I help produce our hundreds of author events each year with a fantastic team here in St. Louis, including Cliff, who's in the lobby, our children's specialist, Chris, who is the owner of the store, who's watching from home this evening, this afternoon. It's an afternoon event. It's really hard for me to get that in my head. We are so happy to be producing great in-person events this summer. We will still be producing virtual events, and we'll continue bringing our in-person events into the virtual world for those of you watching from home. So I know some people drove from Iowa. So if you ever want to join one of our events that we produce, you can do so from the comfort of your home without making a 4-hour trip. You can check out our website, left-bank.com, for a full list of programming for readers of all ages. I did add 2 events very recently that I'm really excited about. 2 people that are on the banned books list. 2 queer authors, as a matter of fact. Juno Dawson will be joining us virtually on June 21st. That is in cooperation with 2 other bookstores. Very excited about that. And a couple days later, Andrew Joseph White will be joining us in person in the store on June 27th. We are also participating in a pop-up with Blueprint Coffee, which is across the street that way, for a pop-up in June to celebrate Queer Joy June. And that pop-up will be on Sunday, June 11th. Now about our book. The young adult adaptation of the moving, hopeful, and refreshingly candid memoir by the husband of a former Democratic presidential candidate about growing up gay in his small Midwestern town. Growing up, Chasten didn't always fit in. He felt different from his father and brothers who loved to hunt and go camping and out of place in the rural, conservative small town where he lived. Back then, blending in was more important than feeling seen. So when Chasten realized he was gay, he kept that part of himself hidden away for a long, painful time. With incredible bravery and the support of his loved ones, Chasten eventually came out. And when he did, he learned that being true to himself was the most rewarding journey of all. Finding acceptance and self-love can seem like a tremendous challenge, but it's never impossible. With honesty, courage, and warmth, Chasten relays his experience of growing up in America and embracing his identity while inspiring young people across the country to do the same. A blurb from, yes it did, Cal Penn, who we had the incredible honor of hosting not that long ago, and I got to be in conversation with him. Really incredible, says about this book. Identity can be tough to navigate as a teenager. Chasten's book reminds everyone of the joy and empowerment that embracing your authentic self can bring. This book is like the smile your 14-year-old self might have needed. I loved it. Such wonderful reassurance that it's okay to feel different, and that our senses of self and identity can constantly change over time. Told with candor and grace, this book is a joyous reminder to be kind to yourself. And now I would like to introduce our speakers for today. I'm going to introduce Tobea first. Tobea Ibiteu is a contributing writer for St. Louis Magazine and a researcher for the Social Policy Institute at Washington University in St. Louis. Previously, he was the manager of public policy and advocacy at Promo, Missouri's statewide LGBTQ+ advocacy program and effort. Chasten Buttigieg grew up in Traverse City, Michigan. He is a teacher, advocate, and husband of former presidential candidate Pete Buttigieg. Chasten currently lives with Pete, their 2 children, Gus and Penelope, and their 2 rescue dogs, Buddy and Truman, in northern Michigan. I Have Something to Tell You for Young Adults is his second book. Without further ado, would you all please help me in warmly welcoming our incredible guests for the afternoon.
Strong community theater vibes.
All right, I'm so happy to meet you, Chasten. It's really an honor to have you here. We've been coast to coast these last few weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think my voice might prove that. Hopefully it lasts the entire talk. It's good to meet you.
And congratulations on the news of the New York Times bestseller list. So let's dive right in. In the last few years, we seem to have really been presented with many definitions of the word intersectionality. And this really is a time for expansively taking that on. I wanted to just read a few lines from your new book, I Have Something to Tell You for Young Adults, which we will discuss in a few minutes, where you actually take on one definition of intersectionality.
Sure.
We may come back to this a little later in our conversation, but I just wanted to read it to start. Because my experience as a gay man is only one perspective, it was important for me to hear from a variety of LGBTQ+ folks who saw and experienced the world differently from me. Our community is not monolithic, that is, we are not all the same. We are a uniquely diverse community that shares vastly different experiences and realities. Experiences based on heritage, race, disability, orientation, or class. It was important for me to meet with people I could learn and grow from. Not because I thought that politically it was the right thing to do, but because as a prominent gay person in politics who was just given a platform, I knew I needed to make sure I was turning around and carrying as many of those voices and experiences with me as possible. If you have a seat at the table, it's important to uplift those who have yet to be heard.
That's right.
So one of the things I think a great deal about in the profession of journalism, and in political life especially, is we're very sophisticated and skilled at investigating and telling the catastrophic and destructive narrative of our time. And not as sophisticated at telling what's the generative story of who and what, how it can become. Which is not to deny what's going wrong, but it's also to take this other part of us seriously that I feel that you've named, how we want to be together. And so as we're going to discuss in your life and in your story, you really contain so many of the stories of our time. So I want to delve into that for all of us in the room and everyone who might be eventually listening or listening virtually, to see the world in our time through that lens of your life. So just to start, you describe yourself as growing up in a politically and religiously conservative northern Michigan, a queer person in a world you didn't believe was ready for you, where there weren't really many gay role models. And could you describe some of those early formative years for you as a quirky queer kid in northern Michigan?
Sure, yeah. There's so much there to unpack. Glad we're going to unpack some of that today. And first, let me say hello, and it's great to be here with you. Yeah, growing up in northern Michigan, it felt like you were supposed to be one type of kid. There really wasn't room for difference, at least it seems like it to me. If you wanted to blend in, and you didn't want to stick out, then you were a roughneck country Christian boy. And in all of the spaces that I was in, whether it was youth group at church or in the 4-H group, even on the bowling team, it felt like you were just supposed to be one type of kid. So from a very early time of my life, I sort of committed myself to that performance of just trying to fit in and not stick my neck out too far. Which is kind of funny in hindsight, because when you look back, even at some of those photos that are put back in the book, it's like, some of the signs were there, But my parents really valued time spent outside, outdoors. I talk a lot in the book about these formative experiences at fish camp with my dad, like driving up to the northern peninsula of Michigan and camping out of a cabin in the middle of the woods with no running water, no electricity, no cell service, no Wi-Fi, nothing, right? And hiking through the woods and catching your dinner. And my dad just really prioritized those type of experiences for us as kids. But I was pretty good at fishing, but that wasn't what I wanted to do. My time, my brothers loved hunting and fishing, and being outdoors and working on pickup trucks and stuff. And I liked performing Celine Dion songs on the karaoke machine in the basement. And so I think hindsight is 20/20. So some of the signs were there, but I was also committed to the idea that if I was going to be quirky and different, that I had to also be funny and performative. And some of the really, two of the only role models I had were Ellen DeGeneres and Will and Grace. And they were making people laugh. So from a young age, I had learned that if you're going to be different, people are going to know it, then at least you should make them laugh. But without going into too many of the stories in the book, I was just this scared, closeted kid who was trying his best to figure out the right type of performance to put forward, but really wasn't spending a lot of time focusing on me and wasn't thinking about all of the things that made me different or unique. And I didn't see that as the thing that made me powerful. I saw it as the thing that would prevent me from family, love, acceptance, community. So Traverse City, as I write, it felt like Traverse City wasn't ready for a kid like me, because we did not talk about the existence of gay people. And the only things I ever heard about gay people were, it was a sin, it was a choice. And then around about the time I was 9 years old, Matthew Shepard was murdered. And Matthew Shepard, was famously taken in a pickup truck and tied to a fence post and left for dead. And I was growing up around a lot of pickup trucks and fence posts. So from a young age, not only was I worried that the big secret was going to be the thing that would prevent me from all those things, I also was worried that it was the thing that might cost me everything as well. So I committed myself to all of those performances, even if, looking back, they were kind of silly, because you see this picture of young Chasten in the cowboy hat and the Wrangler jeans and the American flag shirt and the eagle belt buckle. There was no blending in going on there. But yeah, it felt like to stay safe, to stay alive, to stay accepted, I had to commit myself to a very particular type of presence.
And you're really not Pollyannish at all about presenting those minor embarrassments of your adolescence in the book. And I think that's something that a lot of the readers in this room and those who pick up your book would be able to relate to. You know, in your memoir, in this one, much like the first one, you discuss failure and vulnerability as elements that were integral to your growth over the years. What goes wrong for us as much as what goes right, what we know to be our flaws as much as what we know to be our strengths. These make hope reasonable and live virtue possible. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about this kind of wholeheartedness wrought by vulnerability that you describe so beautifully throughout the book, and about how it's a part of your gift to the world.
Yeah. So I definitely never thought that I would grow up to be the husband of somebody who would run for president, and that certainly changed my life in many ways. And very early on in the campaign experience, I felt this, again, enormous pressure to perform one type of identity. People would say things to me like, aren't you the same age that Jackie Kennedy was? And it's like, ugh, like what? I don't know what to do with that. That just didn't seem like a reality in my world, you know, that I would be equated to somebody like that. And I thought that was very goofy. But that was also telling me, people were telling me, you know, that you are expected to be a certain type of person. And I was freshly out of grad school, I had taught for a couple of years, and all of those vulnerabilities that I talk about in the first book and some of them in this book felt immediately like something that I should keep hidden. Because people will sit you down and say, don't talk about this, you know, present strength, present someone who's got it all figured out, right? Go out there and convince people that you are this perfect image of a person that should be in the White House, and that just seemed really silly to me. And I found, well, one, I found that the only way that I could survive that experience was to be myself. I couldn't pretend to be somebody else. I'd done that for such a large portion of my life. And so I started opening up about certain things on the campaign trail, like my experience coming out, my parents' experience of coming around and supporting their son, that experience of growing up in a part of the country where it felt like you weren't welcomed, and even other, you know, issues in the first book, things that you definitely aren't supposed to talk about in politics, like sexual assault. And the more I talked about those things on the campaign trail, the more I felt a deeper connection with people I was talking to. You know, my experience with medical debt as an uninsured, you know, freshly out of college barista/teacher who goes into the hospital with, you know, a major problem, but feels like they have to rush out of the hospital because they can't be able to afford it. You know, someone who was told to go to college but had also recently come out of the closet and wasn't ready to focus on academia, so just kept taking on the student loans, trying to figure out who they were. I wanted to talk about all these struggles and vulnerabilities because I felt like other people connected to them. And we still live in this political landscape where you're not supposed to be vulnerable. You're not supposed to talk about the things that scare you or the things that shaped you, if those things are considered to be taboo. I don't subscribe to that type of thinking, that we all have these lived experiences that have shaped us, and I would want other people to see themselves reflected in that story, especially when you've been given a platform. People are putting microphones in front of your face and you're going on national television to talk about, you know, attacks against your own community. Why wouldn't you want to make other people feel like you understand where they're coming from? And what you were talking about earlier with intersectionality, the thing that I have grown to really appreciate about this opportunity in life and this platform is the ability to meet with other people and hopefully lift other people up. When the campaign started, I did not know much of anything what it was like to be a trans person in this country. And instead of, you know, jumping into the conversation with commentary the way many people do today, especially on the other side of the aisle, so quick to jump into a culture war, I just asked the campaign to make sure that wherever we were going, and I'd have a roundtable with their local LGBTQ organization. I wanted to meet with trans educators and students and community members, because I felt it was my obligation as an ally, especially one that people were paying attention to get it right. And there's so many experiences, even in our own community, that some of us do not understand. And some of us, especially white, cis gay men, we walk through the world with some privileges that other people in our community don't have. And if you sit down and you listen, and you try your best to connect with people so that you can share their story when you go on national television and you're sitting on stage, I think it just makes our experience as a community even stronger. And it just makes me feel like a better advocate, not because it's, again, the politically right thing to do, because it is the right thing to do. When people in your own community are under such vicious and egregious attacks, but some people will listen to you, what do you have to say? And for me, it was so important to learn and to unlearn and to share those experiences. I just don't see a lot of people in politics committed to that type of work. And I'm not trying to pat myself on the back. I'm frustrated. As a queer person, as a dad, as a member of this community, that there are so many people in politics just committed to the show and not to making people's lives better or safer, especially young, vulnerable trans kids. So I won't get on my soapbox too much, but it's the thing that if you're going to be in this position, getting to be a person I never thought that I would get to be growing up, that scared, closeted kid, probably never could have envisioned a future where he was traveling the country talking about not only his own humanity and experience in this community, but trying to stick up and protect other people in that community. I don't think he would have believed you. So because I get to be this person, I want to make sure that I get it right. And celebrating that intersectionality is so important.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that. And I think, something you said resonates, this idea of being able to see these potentialities for yourself as a kid. And it has something to do with a word that came to mind as I was reading your book, and it's that of vocation. I think the core idea that you're pursuing and trying to trace all the connotations of having is vocation or a calling. And I think in the 20th century, at least in this century, we've kind of conflated vocation with job and even title.
Have you ever been to Washington?
I have, in fact, for a couple of years, and I got my ass up here. But it's really, as you're pointing out in this book, it's not just about what you do, but it's about who you are and how you do it. And it's a plural thing too, We have many callings at once, and you have a vocation as a teacher, as a parent, as a neighbor, as a citizen. And I think, a lot of us in Missouri this week especially are thinking, what is our calling as citizens? And so how would you start to talk about this word vocation, how its ecosystem of implications can start to change the way we create our careers and our lives? What does that mean to you? How would you define it?
Oh, interesting. That's such an interesting question. Yeah, I remember on our first date, telling Pete that it was a weird first date in the sense that I think I was a little too forward. I've been on so many bad dates and had my heart broken by people who shouldn't have had the privilege of loving me, and I just didn't want to do that anymore. I didn't want to get my heart broken, and so that puts me in front of this person, and I'm like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I remember telling him that I've never really known who I want to be when I grow up, what I want to be when I grow up, or who I want to be when I grow up. But the thing that I've always known that I wanted was a family. That I had found education made me feel alive, and it made me feel like I was doing the right thing, but I didn't grow up thinking like, I want to be a teacher. but I've always grown up thinking like, I want to be a dad. Like my dream was always to have like the Diane Keaton Christmas movie house with what? No, that doesn't resonate. Like the gravel driveway and like the room for all your kids and like the old creaky dining room table. Like, that's just the image I wanted. Like I did want the wet picket fence. I grew up in a big family, and for all of the struggle that we had with my own identity, it was still a very loving family. And I just knew I always wanted that. And foolishly, I also thought that I really wanted to be a stay-at-home dad, and that lasted about a year and a half. That's just what I knew I wanted. And to me, being a parent is the thing that grounds me, is the thing that makes me feel most focused in my work as an advocate, as a public person. It helps me write a better book. Because once the twins were born, it just felt like when you're at the optometrist, you know, they like put the little lens over, and it just brings everything into focus. And being a dad has made me so much better at everything else in life. So I definitely feel in places like Washington where it's, you know, the first question is, what do you do? And, you know, they say, I'm a dad, and they're like, I can't get anything from you, you know? But to me, it's the best job, it's the hardest job, and it's the thing that has made me more focused in everything else that I do. To maybe make a more focused response to your question, I think we also have to ask ourselves right now in this moment of politics who we are as allies. Because every room that we occupy, every space that we occupy, there is an opportunity to do good with that work in that space, whether you are a parent or you're a teacher or you're a dentist. Every space that you occupy, you have the potential to make other people feel safe in this world and accepted in this world and comfortable to navigate this world as their truest self. And sometimes when I say these things, I feel like I'm a motivational speaker in your high school, and like I hear myself, and it sounds really silly. But if you think about the task of achieving world peace, we can't do that on our own. One of the things that weighs on me all the time is I wish I could just make things better by myself, especially for my community. But if I just focus on that thing, I'll never be able to accomplish it on my own. So I just break it down into all the things that I know I can do. As a dad, as a teacher, as an advocate, as an author, all of the spaces that we occupy, we do have the ability to be better allies. And that requires active allyship. You know, not just putting the sticker on the door or the flag out front or posting the meme on social media, but finding ways to actively remind people or tell people that they are welcomed and loved in that space. They're free to exist as themselves in that space. And like you said earlier in that, or you pointed out earlier in that quote, if you're sitting at a table, it doesn't matter if you're a banker at a table or you're a teacher at a table, do you know in that space that every voice feels valued at that table? And for me, I've always asked that question, like, who's not even at the table, who's not in the room? And if they are in the room, do they really feel like they can be their most authentic self? And so asking these questions and thinking about active allyship, to get back to the original question, kind of helps me think about who I am in all of these spaces.
What makes me think too, some of us are called to be those patient calmers of fear. You know? It's something that's revealing itself every day as more and more of a necessity. Again, to speak of this state, some of those GOP-led ones that you've visited, you talked yesterday, was it?
Yeah.
So your kids were born a year into writing this book, is that right?
Yeah.
It
made it an interesting experience.
Right, but it's, you know, it's such a beautiful work, and in many ways, I think it's a love letter to teachers and to students, young people. You've mentioned before that it was a really constructive experience comparing notes with, or about that time with your childhood friends, high school teachers, college professors, your parents. So what was that like working with so many people to bring this book to the world?
One thing that was important to me writing it was talking to other people in in my life about these experiences. I was worried that maybe I was so in my head that it wasn't the same experience for other people. So I, early on in the pandemic, we were outside, I could have friends over for bonfires, and we would talk about growing up in northern Michigan, and it was an opportunity to talk to people about what they experienced in the hallways. Talk to college professors and community members, and just trying to get everyone else's experience and sort of working through my memories was in a way sort of cathartic and therapeutic. And then the kids were born, and I knew that I wanted to write a book I wish I would have had when I was younger. What would I want to travel back in time and hand younger me? What would be most helpful for him? And then the kids are born, and I started thinking about what would be most comforting to them. And that one day, if there are other parents in the audience, you understand that when you become a parent, you start to think about all the worst things. And my mom lost her dad when she was really young, and I started thinking about, I might not be here one day, but this will be left behind. What would I want them to read? What would be comforting for them? What would remind them of their worth and their humanity, not just young queer kids, and not just teachers and parents, but then I'm just thinking about Gus and Penelope. So trying to think about the day where maybe their dad isn't there to tell them his story, and what would I want them to know about my story, and what I learned from it, and how I grew from it, and why I became the dad that I am today. And the mission just felt so much clearer once they were born. And we had a really rough go of it those first couple months. When Gus was on a ventilator, Penelope couldn't lie flat for a couple months, so one of us was always awake. Maybe some of that sleep deprivation helped and hurt, but I remember sitting there watching Gus in the children's hospital, and he was like less than 10 pounds, this tiny little kid hooked up to a breathing machine, and just thinking about what do I want? What do I want this little peanut to know about his dad, And what if I'm not here one day? And I just wanted that comfort of all of those experiences and all of those stories and all of my everything wrapped up in the 200-some pages, so that he would know who his dad became and why I do what I do,
Well, it's a story you tell with so much love, and not to shift gears entirely, but I guess to speak of this state and where we are with things. Like Shane mentioned, I spent some time as a policy manager with Program, which is our statewide LGBTQ plus advocacy organization. And for many years, it's been a pretty prominent voice in Jefferson City. Earlier this month, Missouri lawmakers passed bills that ban minors from beginning gender-affirming hormones or puberty blockers for 4 years, starting in August, and that restrict transgender athletes to competing on teams as their birth sex. Both bills will make action by the governor, who's indicated that he intends to sign them into law, and for that reason, there are folks in Missouri who I've spoken to in the last few weeks who are preparing to pack up and move their families elsewhere to literally save the lives of their children. And of course, as you know, and as we've talked about, these stories aren't unique to us. It's a sort of thing that's becoming more common in other GOP-led states across the country. I guess my question to you is, how do you hope young people will be able to apply the moral clarity that you present with this book in their own lives, especially as we emerge from the tumult of this legislative session?
The problem is, I think the young people know who they are. One of the things that inspires me the most traveling around the country is how young people are ready to burn it all down, They see adults in positions of power. They're the adults in the room, and they're acting like children, which is an insult to children. But we just hold like 8th graders to a higher standard of decorum and ethics than we do our own elected officials. And it's gotta be more than aggravating to be a young person in this country, especially a young trans person in this country, to watch adults not only diminish your humanity and your existence, but to go to the State House and decide that the #1 issue that they should focus on is making life harder and less safe for vulnerable kids. A generation of young people who have gone through school, kindergarten through 12th grade in this country, understanding that every time you step into a school in the United States of America, it could be your last day. And the #1 cause of death amongst young people in our country is guns. And you got a bunch of adults down at the State House really worried that a trans kid might feel, I don't know, empowered to be themselves, that they might receive medical care that has been proven to save their lives. And by the way, you're right, we were in Utah yesterday. You know how many trans kids lobbied the State Athletic Association to play on a team that identifies with their identity? One kid wanted to play sports, and a bunch of adults went to the State House to pass a law that would make it harder for one kid to play sports. Talk about an imbalance of priority, especially, it really gets me going. As a dad and as a teacher, someone who, I did lockdown drills as a teacher. It was my job every day when I sent the kids to math, after we had our morning meeting, to walk the perimeter of the school and check every door. As part of our safety committee, we had to have a safety committee to check every door. But people in positions of power in elected office don't want to do a thing about that, don't want to lift a finger on gun violence or anything else. Because I know my husband would probably go, I'm not on a, I don't know, roads or something, but you know, like there's so many things that we could be focused on as a country, and you have adults who are attacking people. But here's the thing I was talking about earlier, is just for me as an ally, as a member of the community, I knew that I had a lot to learn, but I also had things to unlearn. And sitting down with trans people would really benefit these lawmakers who don't want to learn. And they don't want to unlearn. They just want to go online or go to the House floor and say something ridiculous, which gets them on late night TV, which gets them on a podcast, which they can package into an email and fundraise off of, and it's a disgusting cycle of hate and vitriol that is working for them. They're raising a lot of money off of it, and it's driving a cultural right between not only American people, but even people in our own community. And so a lot of people first just need to get the right information, which is our job as advocates, right? And as people in the community to educate other people and help them understand, one, what gender affirming care is, right? But two, talking about the existence of trans people. The problem is you have other people who I'm convinced don't believe that trans people are real, that don't believe gender dysphoria is a real thing, that don't believe that there are kids who need their help. And as an elected official, you're supposed to want to help. And that's one of the biggest issues right now is, you know, places like Utah or even places like here in Missouri. You know, you might have a handful of young people who are out there actively asking for the change, but like you said, you have all these other people living in the shadows who are preparing to flee a state in the United States of America because some elected officials decided that was the most important thing to focus on, was making their kids' life harder. And the data, one in two trans kids will attempt to take their lives in the United States of America. And if that data doesn't scare you into doing the right thing, you're just on the wrong side of history.
You know, you recently returned to Traverse City, and you know, I thought one of the remarkable things that came of that experience was as you put it, you encountered students in their at your former high school who were in GSA and teachers who were out themselves.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's a far cry from your experience at Travis West.
Yeah. It was awesome. Pete and I have, last couple years we moved to Northern Michigan. We moved back to my hometown, and having a book event in Traverse City where I think it was 670-ish people came in my hometown, the town that I was convinced I had to run away from. Humbling and heartening. And then you meet these kids who went to your high school, a high school, which by the way, now I know there were many of us. Nobody was out. No, we did not talk about gay people. It was just a fact. It was unsafe to be gay. And then I meet kids who are at my high school who come up to me afterwards. They're like, "We need to talk about the administration." Somebody said something, or homophobia is still going unchecked. And like I said, you see the fire in their eyes because they're just walking through the world with so much more confidence and a call to humanity and justice and equality and acceptance that we just did not have when I was younger. And it was incredible to see. And then it just reminds you, like we were just talking about adults not wanting, some adults not wanting to do the work, and then you see these frustrated young people who are like, "Why is this what you're focusing on?" And I feel like I have to apologize on behalf of all the adults, But also the incredible experience of getting to walk through the streets of your hometown, a hometown that I was convinced I had to run away from. Walking down Front Street with my husband and my kids, and that confidence of getting to be myself and the motivation to stay and make it better and be part of the change that Northern Michigan is experiencing and definitely needs. It was so cool. And no offense, St. Louis. I love traveling the country, but nothing will, match that experience of walking out onto a stage in your hometown and seeing all of these people there, not because they love you or they want to read your book. I think it's because they just wanted to be in that space, a space that was designed to make us all feel like even for 1 hour, we were alive and we were there and we were present and we're not going anywhere and we're committed to the work. And you could just tell that these people were fired up and that they had wanted for so long to feel that way. And it was a really cool thing to experience. Anyway, I'll stop bragging about my hometown. We don't have gooey butter cake there, so we got cherries though.
No, I really appreciate that. I shared with you, I have some family in Traverse City, so.
That's wild. You're gonna come hang out, right?
Absolutely.
Good.
You go to the cherry.
Yes, Cherry Republic. Yeah, everything cherry. You'll read about it in the book. Everything cherry, including the salsa.
In queso.
And queso.
As we kind of wind down here and open up the floor for conversation, I introduce a little levity into it. I think there are a lot of people in this town and in this room too, I'm sure, who share your love of musical theater. Oh, there you go. You know that the St. Louis area prides itself on having a pretty phenomenal culture of arts education. The Greensburg Arts Foundation is among them. And from what I understand, one of your favorite shows, The Little Shop of Horrors, is coming to the Beauty this summer.
Very cool.
Yeah. How did you get to trace your love of theater and passion for making the arts accessible for students?
Oh, well, when I was in elementary school, it was the teachers telling my parents, he's different or he has a lot of energy. And thank goodness someone had recommended that I should take a theater class. And my parents enrolled me at the Old Town Playhouse in downtown Traverse City, and I remember feeling like, $1 million. I got to go to the big city, Traverse City, and take theater classes. And for those first couple of years, it wasn't so much that I loved theater, it was that I had found a place where I could be goofy and loud, and play a character, and be really creative. But in doing that, I escaped Chasten. I could be somebody else on stage, and people were laughing with me, not at me, and they were applauding all of that creativity and energy that I had bottled up and I didn't know what to do with, and theater was that outlet for me. And as I gained confidence, the older I got, and eventually into college, theater just made me feel alive. It also taught me such valuable lessons that I think every kid benefits from in having access to arts education and theater education. Teamwork, active listening, creativity, problem solving, all of these lessons that I needed to teach my 8th graders. I felt like I was more successful teaching those lessons in drama class rather than in social studies. So I want every kid to have access to that opportunity, not only to stand under the warm lights and feel, the thunderous applause of acceptance, but to just be in an environment where you are asked to think about your place in the group. And maybe that translates into your place in community and country, and how to actively listen to the person across from you, and how to anticipate, and how to improvise. When I was on the campaign trail, I'll never forget telling a reporter who had asked, "What prepared you for this moment?" And I said, "I taught middle school and I have a theater degree, so I can basically do anything." And that was her response too. And I really believed it. Theater taught me to be confident in myself and how to stand on the stage and anticipate and deliver. And teaching middle school humbled me, helped me stand up a little taller. And I want every kid to have that experience, because we're also, going through this fast shift as a country. We're not teaching robots, we're teaching human beings. And I think every kid needs that outlet to explore their creativity and their individuality, whether it's theater or music. Every kid should have access to theater, and just because the campaign ended doesn't mean I'm going to stop talking about that. I really do believe that we should be focusing more on the arts and humanities as a country. I really do believe it can help save democracy. We've learned, I see some heads nodding, I'm guessing there's some theater people in the room too. We've learned so much about ourselves and our community and our place in the world, and how to empathize with other people through the arts, and we could really use that as a country right now.
Well, thank you, Chasten, and let's open this up for a few minutes here. If anybody else wants to be in conversation with Chasten.
Let's give another round of applause for today.
So I'm going to run over to the microphone. If you have a question, just raise your hand. And who's going to be first?
Will you become first gentleman of the United States? What will your role be?
I didn't hear the question. I'm serious, I didn't hear the question.
When you become first gentleman of the United States, what will your role be?
Oh, the experience of the campaign is, something I'll never forget, and it helped me realize so much more about who I am and what I care about and what I can do. And I naively thought when I left the classroom in 2019 that if it doesn't work out for him, then I can just go back to teaching. And I had no idea that life was going to blow up and change, and that there was no going back to many things, And I've also learned that I don't have to wait for some day to come where I might have a different title. Plus I have feelings about that, but these are all the things that I care about now. In 2019 and 2020, I was talking about arts education and mental health, and making sure that everyone had access to both. And I still talk about them today. So I don't have to wait for that day. I'm very humbled when people like you say that. I'm a little scared of that. I have a lot of opinions about it as a dad now. But I'm never going to stop talking about all those things that I care about. Especially as the world just keeps changing, and it seems like, we made so much progress, and now it feels like it's slipping. Only because our media ecosystem in Washington sort of rewards bad behavior. And so you hear about a lot of the awful parts of politics in the country, but being in rooms like this and traveling the country on a book tour and just getting to be this person, I'm always reminded about how many good people there are in this country, and all the people who are doing the really hard work. And I like being part of that. You know, there are parts of Washington that I still just do not recognize. I think it's also because I'm from the Midwest, you know, that I'm trying to just stay humble and stay focused. But I want to stay in that feeling of community and focus on the things that I can do as a dad, as a teacher, as an advocate. So I feel like I don't have to wait for some big title someday. I feel like I get to do it right now. And that I really appreciate.
Hi there. I have a question about Gus and Penelope, which are my favorite on social media. They're adorable. How are you and Pete kind of navigating a lot of the attacks coming your way, especially in the presence of your children? And what do you think allies can do to help? Like those sorts of situations, and you know, we experienced them in our own lives.
Yeah, you know, the art of social media is the fact that, like I said, it does reward bad behavior. And so much of it is just not real. Learning the fact that I have the power to just push the power button on the phone and put it away, and deny those types of people the attention that they want, is a power that I wish I would have known about a long time ago, or that I had felt that I had a long time ago. My kids are awesome, you know, and being a dad is the coolest thing. And that is what's real to me. You know, less than 10% of Americans are on Twitter, and you know, so if you ever read that Pew study about Twitter, it's wild, you know. And I always tell people, like I told my students, you know, people on social media think they're the only conversations happening. But to give you a classroom or a school analogy, they're actually just the kids at one lunch table who think they're the only table at lunch. When you zoom out, there's so much more happening around you. You know, I love going home from Michigan, talking to my neighbors, going to the grocery store, and specifically with, you know, all of the nastiness happening in politics today. Like, no one's ever coming up to me at Memoir and asking me about like beer bottles and drag queens, because they're not like actively participating in whatever nonsense is happening on social media that day. They're going about their lives trying to raise their kids, do a good job. And so I am always reminding myself that there are millions of other people out here who aren't paying attention to whatever loudmouth on Twitter has decided to attack my kids, you know? So as just an ally, I would ask you to, I already know that you care, you know? And it is, sometimes it's nice to see people defending you, but I also, like, I don't want you to be in that space either, you know? Because it just pulls all of us down, and it's what they want. And so while this might sound like maybe a little too catty, okay. Sometimes when I see things like that, I just think about how miserable they are and how happy I am. I'm so happy. I love my kids. I love my husband. I love my family. I love that I got to grow up and be a person I wish I would have had when I was younger. I love writing, and I'm really happy. And that person hates that. They hate that I'm happy. And I want you to get dragged into their life, you know? Because the saying is true, you know? The problem with playing with a pig is that the pig likes it and you get dirty. I don't love participating in that. Every now and then, you know, it's good to make a point. But, you know, that just, you zoom out and like all these conversations I've had, even this, like having this space, sharing this space with you, it just puts wind in my sails. like being down in Florida and chatting with librarians and teachers and, you know, being out in Portland and meeting with young trans students, it just reminds me of what matters and why we're all here and why we do what we do. And the fact that there are millions of good people focused on the work who aren't just like arguing with robots online. And so allies have two options, and I think there's room for both. You can stick up for people and defend people online, but don't let that be your only form of allyship. Because not everybody's in that space, and it's also, it will just drain your tank. You know, you have to find ways to continuously put gas in your tank so you keep showing up for other people. And so that's a hard line to, it's a hard road to walk sometimes, because when I open up my social media, it just punches me in the face right away, right? And if you put the problem with, you know, hunting for BS is you're always gonna find it. You will always find it. You can always find something on social media that you could weigh in on, and someone that you could defend, and a wrong that you could try to right. Another problem with social media is like, how often do you see someone on Twitter go, you know what, I see it your way now, thank you so much. You know? So there are so many other forms of allyship that we could be practicing instead of arguing with people online every day. And that includes supporting organizations like Promo, what was the other one? EMTA, you know, there are organizations right here on the ground doing the work who could use your time, your money, your privilege, your resources, and you don't have to march in the streets every weekend, but you could also just support people who are trying to keep kids alive, trying to create community for other people to feel welcome and supported. And so I acknowledge that it's a tightrope. But when I see even those people online who just are going after kids, it's like, the point of pride is to celebrate our existence, and the fact that we're here, and the fact that we're happy. And I just stay focused on what's real and the work that you can do. And whenever it gets loud and nasty online, I put my phone away and I get down on the floor and I play with Gus and Penelope, because they remind me that the most important thing in the world is being a really good dad. And I just stay focused on that. Back here. Oh.
Hi. Hey. You'll remember, as I remember, there being a time when two people could diverge politically, but still have some degree of positive association. So I remember growing up in West County here, or in North Texas, or in Northern Virginia, having folks, associating folks with slightly diverging opinions and still being friendly. Sure. I think over the course of the 08 to 16, and then particularly the 4 years with the obstructionism of that era, followed by the bombastic populism that followed for 4 years, we've migrated from that to not only do I disagree with you, but I can't associate with you, I can't be friends with you. And so my question to you, and thank you for being here today, is how do you negotiate that kind of social transaction when you kind of have an indication that to start, the person is already kind of, you know, not ready to hear you out, ready to, you know, jump down your throat with some kind of implication that you weren't intending to come across, just not, you know, you already know that it's an uphill battle. How do you transact that?
Yeah, so you can't have a conversation about politics unless both people are coming to the table in good faith and that your safety is assured. So for young people who are questioning whether they can come out to their parents, I always tell them, think of your safety first. You know, you have to make sure that you're safe. And then good faith. If both parties aren't willing to have a conversation in good faith, then you're not going to have a constructive conversation. I have always tried, to traverse the political landscape with the idea that rather than beating people over the head with a 2x4, I just keep laying them down and build the bridge. And that sometimes it takes work, effort, and time to help people cross that bridge. Especially in places like Northern Michigan or rural America, where some people, I do believe, want to get there, and they don't know how. I definitely experienced this on the campaign trail. They want to get there. But I'm not going to help them get to the right side of history or the ideas of acceptance and community if I am just beating them over the head and making them feel like they are less than because they might have an opinion that they might need to unlearn. That's not for everybody. I know that it's pretty hard to go through life when you have people question your humanity, your identity, and your worthiness of community, and maybe even your existence in and of itself. And so, like we were talking about earlier, the work of allies, especially if you have more privilege than other people, you recognize that and go out there and do the work for other people who should not be burdened with being the only ones speaking up for vulnerable people, you know? And that can be draining when you're constantly defending your humanity and your identity and your existence. I was talking about making sure you have gas in your tank to keep going, you know? And I do believe that there are many people right now who do not recognize what is going on the other side of the aisle, including people in my own family, like lifelong Republicans, kind of just because you are, you know, grow up in a rural place and you don't really think about politics too much, and being a Republican is kind of just an identity. And then they start attacking vulnerable people. They start saying things about maybe their nephew or their grandson that they do not recognize. And I've met these people all across the country who just do not identify with what is happening. And it's those conversations that I appreciate having. When I'm back home and I'm talking to a neighbor or someone at the grocery store, and I do not know if they're a Republican or a Democrat, but I can tell that we're both having a conversation in good faith. And sometimes when those questions start out as the wrong question or the insulting question that they might not know is insulting or the wrong question, rather than saying, wow, that was a really bigoted question, you know? For me, I try to say, well, you know, the way I see it, or what I have learned, and sharing some of those vulnerabilities and opening up about maybe some things that I had to learn or unlearn, and trying to root my opinions in the humanity and the reality of other people's stories, especially when I'm talking about trans people. There are many people in Northern Michigan who have never met a trans person. And they might just watch a certain news program or hear something on the radio and just assume that it's true. And while some of their questions can be mind-bogglingly ignorant, I try to say, hey, so here's what I've learned. You know, I've got to sit down and talk to people. Or, you know, did you know that every major American medical association in this country believes in gender-affirming care? Did you know these statistics, 1 in 2 kids are going to attempt to take their life? Did you know that 40% of the kids sleeping on the streets identify as LGBTQ? Did you know that? And did you know that it's our responsibility to try to help? You know, I try to just root these conversations with data and humanity. And that's why I appreciate hearing other people's stories, because I get to share them at the grocery store with people who I do believe want to be on the right side of history. But if you turn on the television, you go on Twitter, you know, it's just a bunch of people punching each other in the virtual face. And I just try to stick in that work, you know? But if your humanity itself is coming up for debate at the table, I also try to help people remember that family is chosen. And you don't have to put yourself in situations that question your own existence, you know? So I know it's, again, we're all walking interesting tightrope right now, because we want to help people get there. And that is an act of allyship, having those conversations and helping people learn and unlearn. But you don't have to do it every day, too. I always tell people the things that I need. I like to surround myself with good friends, and cupcakes. You know, find ways to put gas in your tank to keep doing that work, because it is, at times, exhausting, but it is so needed right now.
Last question. Do we have time for one more question?
Yeah. Okay. I don't know what time it is. We're good? Okay.
Hi, Chasten.
Hi.
I'm a teacher. I came in from Lexington, Kentucky to see you.
Oh, wow.
I'm very excited to see you. I have a One of the questions I get from my students often going through the courses is, can you put up a video to elaborate on this topic? You know, because that's how well I'm teaching this curriculum, and I can't go super deep in this nuance of X, Y, and Z on the periphery. And they're like, well, can you put up an AP video, YouTube or something, and kind of expound on this? And I realize that that's a lot of work for me, a lot of work for you. But I'm asking you, have you ever considered putting out audio-visual material of some sort, expounding on your experiences, whether that's your experiences as a student, as a teacher, you were a middle school teacher, I teach in a vocational adult school, so we have your little, you could bring analogies that that resonate with me, but they don't, you know, I didn't live those experiences, so I know you have a lot of experiences that I don't have, or such as the material from these roundtables you go to around the country, you know, you pick up new information constantly. I was thinking, like, is there a way, or have you ever considered using audio visual to kind of disseminate that information out?
Yeah, well, thanks. I've thought about it a little bit. I don't just want to be like another white guy with a podcast, you know? So I've always tried to think about like the ways in which to use the platform in a good way that's instructive, and I have been doodling on ways to have some of the conversations I'm having around the country that other people can benefit from. Just off the cuff, one of the things I actually really liked recently was Daniel Radcliffe did a roundtable with some trans students for the Trevor Project, which was really enlightening. I thought it was just a nice way to use that platform to have some of those conversations, just to hear from, you know, teenagers themselves sharing their experiences and their stories. Because like I was talking about earlier, when you're having these conversations with people, what you really need is humanity. And just hearing those stories helps me be a better ally. I feel like it might help you be a better teacher, like when you can root things in reality and lived experience. For me, I'm still trying to figure it out, but I appreciate that you think it'd be beneficial. So yeah, we'll see where it goes. Thanks.
Another giant round of applause for Chasten.
Thank you so much for being here. I know it's a holiday weekend, and we're all probably ready to go do whatever it is we do, and I can't wait to get to my kids today. But I figured happy early Pride to all of you, and I know that things seem tough right now, but I do believe it gets better when we all commit to making it better, and it's easier to hold on when there are other people holding on to you. So maybe there's an opportunity for you to make a little community today, say hello to one another. Yourself that you can't always stay in the fight if you're not putting gas in your tank. One of the tiny little things that I think is great on the book tour is that we've been asking folks if you have the ability to donate a copy of the book, and then Left Bank is going to make sure that we get those to the local LGBT organizations that we talked about. So if cost is a barrier to any young person, we can try to make this book available to them. And then just find other ways to think about that term active allyship as we head out into Pride Month. And just know that you will always have a friend and an ally in me, and I appreciate your warm welcome to Missouri, and I can't wait to come back. So take care, everybody. Thank you.
And another big thanks for all of you. Really, it is so fantastic to be in this room with such a beautiful crowd. Club is in the lobby. More copies are available for sale out there. So if you do know people in the community that need a copy of this book, if you want to donate a copy, we will, like you said, get it donated. So thank you so much for being here. Have a great rest of your day.
He's gonna take our picture. Don't use my phone. I as well.
I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about. I mean, I do, but I
Yeah,
don't.
whichever one makes it so our Thank you so much.
Yeah, we got